Hello and welcome to the Super Rugby AU Round 2 and Super Rugby Aotearoa Round 1 preview brought to you by New Zealand Sports Radio. Hi, I'm Paul and I'll be your host with the most this evening. Joining me is Cornflake. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm the guest with the best opinions. There we go.
Is it going to work?
Double whammy. We're on fire to start off already. Look at
that. Oh, dear me. So this is your second time doing this because obviously you've done it on your own channel, on the Cornflake channel already, with Shane, who we had here on the standoff show last night, talking NRL with Brad. So you can go and see if Cornflake has changed his mind in the last 2 hours between doing it then or 4 hours as to between then and now. But hey, let's get straight into it because we have got 4 whole games to get through this week. Right, wow. Kicking us off, we have the Highlanders versus the Crusaders. The list for Solomon Alomalo comes in at fullback for the Highlanders. His first competitive game for them. Conor Gunn-Bashop on one wing. Punavai and Tompkinson are in at the centres with Nariki on the other wing. Mitch Hunt and Aaron Smith are going to be running things for 9 and 10. Then in the pack, the front row will be Leonard Brown, Dixon, Tokalahi with the other Dixon, Josh and Jack Regan in the engine room. And then back a loose trio of Frizzell, Harmon, Billy Harmon, again, his first game for the team, and Michaeli Tu'u. Wow, the man in the straw hat has decided to join us as well. How are you doing, Stephen?
Very good, thank you, gentlemen, and right on cue too.
Well, you're a bit late, but hey, we'll let you off. These old fellas can't tell the time properly. That's the problem. Just quickly with the bench there: Coltman, Honeck, Thwaites to the front row, Evans, Liam Squire, Fakatava, Josh Awani, and Hugh Renton. And I guess for me, guys, the one surprise here is seeing Josh Awani on the bench and not starting at 15 with Solomon Alomalo getting the nod there. Cornflake, this is your team. Your thoughts on the lineup?
Strong, good. Trying to think of some spectacular words. Look, our biggest strength is going to be the back row headache that we've kind of been building up as in the preseason. Is it how good is it going to be to have a guy like Liam Squire come rumbling on later on the match to replace whoever's playing the most average out of Frizzell, Harmon or Michaeli too? What's going to be interesting is what we get out of Billy Harmon, though, I think, because the former Crusader up against the Crusaders, game 1, new team, new jersey. He's going to be an interesting one. And of course, like you said, that number 10, Mitch Hunt. I think, he's come a long way in the last couple of years. If you had said to me last season or even, the season before, I would have gone, oh, no, Ioane, no question. It's got to be Ioane starting in 10. But Mitch Hunt's really put his hand up, I think, over the last 12 months, definitely, and has become a pretty solid number 10 at this sort of level for the Highlanders. He's moulded quite well for the team. So can't complain about that, but I'm excited to see, obviously something's come out pretty good from the preseason for Conor Gunn-Bashop to be getting that number 14 jumper. And it's also exciting to see Solomon Alomalo at that, any jersey. I don't care what jersey he wears, as long as it's got 2 digits on it. He's going to be exciting and explosive, and he's going to make things happen. So it's a good start. I think built-wise, this team is building depth. It's getting better. I think the fact that we have a lot of those guys who can, start or come off the bench is only going to be good for this team. But it's a baptism of fire in the opening round, isn't it, against a team like the Crusaders? So we'll see. But team-wise on paper, looking at just the squad, it's a good start. And Jack Regan, the Irishman, good to see him there.
Talking of fire, obviously the sofa burning ceremony, and Aaron says you're back from University Oval, so good to see that. Yes, after you've done that, you've made it back in time. Good evening, Simon. Everyone else here in the live chat, good to have you there. You're right. I mean, look, a Highlanders bench with you say Liam Squire, Josh Ioane, both All Blacks. That's something that you guys haven't had the luxury of in recent seasons. So the strength in depth, as you said, particularly in that back row, but in other positions as well, is definitely a step up for the Highlanders this season. which is great to see. For me, the only question is how quickly they gel in there. Up against, obviously, the reigning champions in the Crusaders with Will Jordan, Sevu Reece, and Lester Fainuku on the back three. Goodhue and Dallas McLeod in the number 12 jersey there. Bryn Hall, Richard Mwanga in 9 and 10. Across your front row, Moody, Taylor, and Aotearoa with Scott Barrett and Whitelock in the engine room. Scott Barrett as captain there. Blackadder, Christie, Cullen Grace as your as your loose trio. Off the bench, Brady McAllister, Bauer, Fletcher Newell, Strange, Havili, Sione Havili, that is, Drummond, Burke, and Fire-Aki. Stephen, good to see that Will Jordan's injury has been overcome and he can get on the pitch.
Yeah, great to see. Listen, just before we step away from that Highlanders team, one interesting feature that stood out straight away when I saw the naming of the side was the bench split of 6 forwards and 2 backs. Guys, Hugh Renton wearing that number 23 jersey. So just the 2 replacement backs there with obviously the likes of Josh Ioane, who can play. He can either slot into fullback or into first 5, as we know, and Falau Fukatava, well, we know what he'll bring off the bench. So listen, Tony Brown obviously under no illusions that they're going to have to front up when they take on this Crusaders outfit. So I suppose before we even look at the likes of the Will Jordans of this world, I think if you can get parity with the Crusaders in the forwards, I think that's what the Highlanders will be looking to do. And listen, on paper, the pack that they've put together looks more than capable. And if anybody knows the Crusaders game, anybody than the Crusaders, I suppose Billy Harmon will have a little bit of an insight into the way that they play.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Having that insight information will be good for them. As you say, yeah, up front is where you've got to do it first. And as Nocturnal Rights says in the live chat, the Crusaders only got 29 All Blacks to choose from. So it's obviously some All Blacks don't even make it into the matchday squad. But a couple of new names there. I mean, I think probably the one that surprised a few people is that number 12 jersey going to Dallas McLeod there. That's going to be an interesting one. A step down from the sort of quality they've had over the last couple of seasons, I would say, Cornflake.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you look at that Highlanders team, and typically over the seasons we talked about the Highlanders, you look at it and you look at that midfield as somewhere they've had okay players, but no world-beating, outstanding sort of guys. You know, the Rob Thompsons and the Theo Tompkinsons and guys like that. They're okay. Some have a little bit of a red streak in their mind, but they're not going to set your world alight. Whereas the Crusaders have had that on their side, the Crotties of this world, and now the Goodhues and things like that. But this is, I think, a little bit of a leveler now, having a newcomer into that midfield up against probably, you'd say, almost the Highlanders might have a little bit of a nudge there with a guy like Punavai, who's had a little bit more time around this sort of level. Not much, but he has been there or thereabouts before. So that's something I think is going to hopefully level this game out a little bit more. You may see the Crusaders having to work around that sort of guy or how that's going to affect their play, having a relative youngster. But I mean, you look at the rest of the team and you say last season when they had guys like, Cullen Grace, who was in his first season with them, and he just absolutely blew the world alight. So, I could be clutching at straws that we're going to have a little bit of a weakness in a Crusaders team, but he's hoping that it might be something they can attack through some big carries through that midfield, and hopefully setting Alomalo, the man who will stay injury-free all season, alight. But this is typical Crusaders, though. That's what they do. They just get guys rumbling through and they just do their job, and that's all they need to worry about. And we've said year after year, that's why they're so good. This guy will come into the team. He knows what he's got to do. He knows inside of Mo'unga's not going to put any undue pressure on him. He knows outside him, if he gets stuck, he's got a guy like Goodhue who can bail him out. And that's just why this team is up there. Well, it's the best, isn't it? There's no one to compete with them so far.
Yeah, it's and whilst we do have Fletcher Newell and Che Fikai coming in as debutants off the bench as well, we've seen that when they've brought debutants in off the bench in previous seasons, like Sevu Reece, they've gone on to become All Blacks in the same season. So you look at them and go, oh, perhaps there's an opportunity, and then they end up stepping up and being the best player on park. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to wait and see. Nocturnal Rights, they're reckoning that the Crusaders will be obviously trying to do a controlling game and then pull away at the end. Yeah, look, the Crusaders are the best team at scoring from their own half. All the other teams very rarely, as long as they're in their own half, they very rarely score. I had a stats session that I attended on Tuesday morning. So yeah, that back three, especially with Will Jordan to lead those counter attacks, and then with Sevu Reece and Lester Vainganuku running in supporting lines, that's our Highlanders kicking game is going to have to be spot on if they are going to try and play any kind of territory game. But yeah, playing at pace is going to be important for them. Any thoughts, Stephen, before we head over the ditch to Australia?
No, I think we should almost head over the ditch now, because just looking at that side, it is strong. You want to see the Highlanders turn this competition on its head with a great start, and listen, they'll go in with no end of confidence. But boy, I just look at that back three. It's just seriously scary, and some firepower to come off the bench as well, with obviously George Bow, who made his debut as an All Black last year. And watch out for Fletcher Newell, really highly rated. He was the player of the tournament for Canterbury under-19s down in Taupo 2 seasons ago, and he is very, very highly rated young man. Of course, Shea Fiaki, we know what he can do as well, but I do question how much game time he's going to have if that back three are running hot.
Yeah, remember absolutely. What happened last season, the first game between these two teams, where it was about 15 minutes to go or so, and I think it was about 5 points in it or so. It was a really close, tight game, and we were in for an absolute cracker. And then the Crusaders absolutely just, said, okay, we've had enough. We want to have some fun, and scored about 3 unanswered tries and won at 40-20, if I'm not mistaken. And that's just what they can do. And like guys in the chat are saying, you can't sleep on the Highlanders. Need to go into that end with the lead if they want to have any chance of winning this game. They've got to go into that final quarter of the match with a 10-point lead, a 15-point lead, as much as possible, obviously. But you can never go into a close ending with the Crusaders, and it's always going to play on your mind that doubt that this is a team, no matter if they're on their own 5-metre line, if they've got the ball and it's less than 80 minutes or even after 80 minutes, they will still punish you, and they can take a game away from you in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and under Razor Robinson, their slow starting reputation to the season has also disappeared as well. So not even that ray of comfort.
Yeah, I was about to say what Steve said is right. I think you just need a really fast start, get points on them, create a bit of scoreboard pressure, because I think they're one of those teams. Even if you stay in the fight with them, like you say, you referred back to last year's game, that they just find a way of breaking you down and strangling you.
Right then, so yeah, heading over to the ditch then for the first game of their Reds versus Rebels, and some interesting selections by the Reds for their one. On the front row of Xander, Maffey and Topu, who was on the bench last weekend, Blythe and Uru in the engine room. Scott Young, McWright and Wilson are the exciting Lucies. Tate McDermott and Jock Campbell in the number 10 jersey there, with Hunter Pasami and Hamish Stewart in the 12 and 13 jersey. Jordan Pataya out on one wing, Filippo Dongunu on the other, and James O'Connor at fullback. Off the bench, Nasser, Hupert, Fotikaya, Smith, Wallace, Sorovi, Hegarty, and Vunivalu, who's had his naughty boy slap on the wrist and is now allowed to come and play. But I think really it's that back line combination that they've chosen with Hamish Stewart in the 13 jersey, really a strange one. James O'Connor at 15 and Jock Campbell at 10. I mean, 3 players you probably expected to play Cornflake, just not in those jerseys.
Well, how much time are they going to spend in those jerseys effectively on the field is probably the biggest question about. I mean, you can put them there, but yeah, it's a bit like putting Bowden Barrett or Damien McKenzie in a 15 jumper. They more often than not will play in 10. So, yep, they'll run on like that, but it's a bit like how they play, isn't it? Those guys all like to switch around, and it kind of gives them that versatility throughout their team and versatility to their game as well, so they can adjust to how the game's going and how they think the thing's going to run out. But I mean, it's the Rebels, and does it taste a little bit of maybe taking them a little bit lightly? I don't know. I don't rate this Rebels team too highly, and looking at the team they're throwing out here as well doesn't change my mind too much. So, the way the Reds are going, the form that they're in, they've brought the big boy up front back on. He's going to have some fun. And it's that big battle of those two number threes that I'm excited to see as well between these two sides. But yeah, the Reds are in full control. And it doesn't matter what shirt those guys are wearing. O'Connor will control the game like he did last week, and it's his battle again with his opposite. Well, what will be an opposite number 10 in Matt Timur. That's going to be the real decisive part of this match, is how those two guys play, especially the style that Timur brings. But more on that for the Rebels.
Yeah, maybe there is a bit of horses for courses here by bringing Hunter Basami.
Oh, we've frozen him. We've killed him. You mic'd yourself. Here we go. He's back.
Sorry? Did I just
froze up there? Yeah, you froze up. So to redo that bit.
That might be why they brought Sammy in closer, is that you can be up against Reece Hodge, who's not a small boy in that 12 jersey. Whereas, Reece Hodge running down that channel with O'Connor and Hamish Stewart would have been a different prospect. So maybe that's why they brought him in. Maybe it's a bit of horses for courses in there, which will be interesting to see. So let's run through that Rebels side then. Eloff, Ulesi, Femi Asuli on the front row, Cummins and Hosea in the engine room. Wilkin, Hardwick, Wells are the loose trio. Powell and Timur going to run things. Hodge and Illy are your centres, with Corabetti, Lachlan, Anderson and Tom Picus as the back three. Off the bench, Craig, Adel Kalahi, Van Neck, Luetta, Kemeny, Tuttle, Vayahu and Lamani. So, yeah, I mean, a number of, quite a few, you'd expect that quite a few newish names in that back line. No Haylett Petty or those sort of players in there. So, yeah, a bit of I'm not expecting much from this Rebels team, to be honest. Stephen, sorry, go on then, Steve. You're shaking your head.
He's muted himself. There we go.
Okay.
I was going to say a player that's really interesting there. The 13 jersey for Rebels, is that Stacey Ely from the Hawke's Bay Magpies?
I would guess so. I don't know how many Stacey Illys there are running around.
No, he certainly has.
It's not a very common name.
So it is. Yeah, Stacey Ely from the Magpies who's head over there.
Yeah, well, it's got their former Rebels player Stacey Ely. So maybe he's played a little bit before for the Rebels.
He played for the Melbourne Rising in 2015.
There you go.
And then went over to Connacht for a couple of years and has come back again. Yep.
Well,
this. Continue.
Be interesting to see how he goes in this company.
Yeah, I'm not sold on this Rebel team, to be honest with you. They've kind of, I called it a bit of a patchwork team. They got strength in some places, but it falls off massively. So you look through the team, like Joe Powell and Timur, really, really key. Corabetti as well, Hodge. But then outside of that, it's like Tom Pincus is probably your most experienced guy through there, and he hasn't been around too long either. And the pack does much the same. I like the Wilkin, Hardwick, Wells sort of combination, but Cummins and Hosea in the second row, not considerably experienced there. Faham Asili, I'm excited to see him. Ulesi again, if he can stay injury free, will be good. But Eloff, another unknown. So you get one or two good players, and you get one or two unknowns. And I mean, Australia's not like the Crusaders, is that we don't sit here and go, well, we're going to have a Wallaby in 6 months' time. So I don't know if we're going to get that same sort of strength popping through. But I mean, this is what Australia needs to do, though. This is where they've got to find these next range guys coming through and up to that next level. And I mean, the Waratahs are doing it pretty hard right now, but they are bringing a lot of youth through their team. We'll talk about that at the end and their matchup. But I think the Rebels are a side that are going to be doing, or have to do much of the same here, losing a lot of experience. You talk about those guys that they've lost there earlier, Paul, but this, we get to find out, but it's hard, isn't it? It's much like the Highlanders start for them against Crusaders. This is tough because they would have been watching this game last week, the Rebels, and going, let's discover how this Reds team's going to play competition-wise. And they would have watched that game against the Waratahs, and they would have gone, oh, crap. We're in the spot of bother now. They would have liked to study it. They would have liked the Waratahs to do better and kind of, put a bit of, not knocking their confidence, but boy, the Reds will be sky high now. They'll be happy as any old chaps, and they'll be firing into this one full guns blazing, and you got to feel sorry that the Rebels probably will just bear the brunt of the rolling ball down the hill.
Yeah, and look, if their pack can give them some platform, Nocturnal Right says, is it worth swapping Timur and Hodge around the way that Hodge played for the Wallabies at 10? Look, it means they can have two playmakers. They can play left and right with Timur and Hodge. So yes, again, a bit like for the Reds, where you've got three playmakers with numbers on their backs. Who's actually going to be first receiver? I think you'll see something similar from Reese and Hodge. Reese and Hodge? No, Reese Hodge and Matt Timur. Switching around who is first receiver, who's not. Perhaps putting one of them slipping even out to the 13 channel to be that wider kicking option and things like that. So I think it's again, don't necessarily, the numbers on their backs might not be about exactly where they're playing the full part of the game for those two players as well.
I think Matt Timur is going to be massive as well, how he plays. We know he's a good enough player, but I found some games last season he would just aimlessly kick, trying to, I don't know, spark something, but just out of ideas or out of options. They've tried charging Reece Hodge through the middle. They've tried slipping some short balls to forwards. They just seem to don't have a second or third plan that just ends up being like, well, we'll just hack it downfield and hope something happens from that. So Timur is going to be key, because if he's on song and he's playing well, kicking with purpose, running at the line like he does very well for a number 10, they will go all right. But if they don't get that sort of mindset game from him, they could be in even more trouble. Yeah,
and for me, it's important that Timur plays in the dry. To me, as a wet player, not a good option at 10. Steve, should we come home and to a team that's a couple of teams that you're more au fait with, and talk about the Hurricanes versus the Blues? First up, then we have the Hurricanes with Armstrong, Amua, Lomax across the front there, Blackwell and Scrafton in the engine room, Fafita, Flanders, and Artie Surveyor as your loose trio. Artie Surveyor on his 100th cap as well as captaincy, so big game for him. Big games for the 9 and 10 there as well. Tua Martini and Garden Bishop. How are they going to go? Obviously, TJ Perinara and up in Japan, and Bowden Barrett also left as well. But at least they always have that get out of jail option of Laumapi in 12 and then Proctor in 13. Julian Surveyor gets the nod in the 11th jersey, rolling back the years. Houston on the other wing and Geordie Barrett at fullback. Off the bench, Riccatelli, Namai, Fidel, Princep, Karifi, Campbell on debut, Peter Amanga Jensen, and Rayasi, who I must admit I thought I would have had in that 11 jersey. Stephen, you're shaking your head at some of my pronunciations, I think.
No. I'm just shaking my head at the quality of the bench of this Hurricane side. Man, they've got some. It's pretty handy when you've got both Rayasi and Peter Umanga Jensen on the bench, and also we know what a talent that Luke Campbell, but also we've also got Duplessis Karifi as well, who can. We know what a good 7 he is. So there is plenty of options. It's a very strong side, in my opinion. But obviously Dane Coles, who's not in the team at the minute, and once again, really strong through the midfield. I suppose the only area where they are a little bit, well, not so much unknown, Jackson Garden Bishop and Jonathan Tomataine in the 9 jersey will have to step up. Read the departure of TJ Perinara, but no, good side. I like it.
Yeah, with a lot of players playing off 9 nowadays rather than off 10, there's a lot of weight on his shoulders. And there's also a lot of weight on Garden Bishop's shoulders to call the ball out to him when he wants it and get that kicking right. As Nocturnal Right said, pre-season they were kicking ball away perhaps a bit too often, and so the decision making in that axis between that 9, 10, and 15 with Geordie Barrett coming up potentially into first playmaker as we see him do as well is going to be key for this team, because look, that's a very subtle pack. That pack has played together a lot. They should be good at the breakdown. They should be good. They should be able to get, perhaps don't have the grunt of some teams, but that's still but it's a pack that should work well together. And as you say, they shouldn't dip at the hour mark when the bench comes on either. So yeah, look, a lot of people not rating the Hurricanes this year. I think that perhaps people are being a little bit too harsh on them. I think they've got a decent side in there. Cornflake, any kind of comments before I head up north to the Blues?
Well, you've pretty much hit everything on the head that I'll probably pinpoint on this sort of team. A mobile pack, probably adding to what you're saying before, it's not a big, digger rumbling through. These guys get around the park very fast. If they get open play, they're very good in support, and they can by themselves, on a half break, they can make something happen and put points on the board. So guys like especially Fafita and Salvia will get around the park. They've got a real engine room of that second row, isn't it? It's guys like those journeyman guys that just do their roles. They just scrum well, they hit rucks, and they win lineouts. Scrafton and Blackwell, I think their stocks have gone up fairly well just by working and doing what they do. They're not flashy, but they do those jobs very, very well. So it's a solid pack that's generally not going to let you down at doing the things that they are there to do. So that's what's good. But yeah, that 9-10 is a problem. But I mean, look at the other side of the park, and there's equal problems on the other side. But I do think they probably needed 12. As great a player as Laumapi is, don't get me wrong there, but they needed 12. That's probably more of a game controller, like a Ryan Crotty sort of player that would make things happen and demand the team around in space of having not a very experienced 10. Laumapi will just sit out there and wait for something to come his way rather than actually making something happen. I think that could be where things get a little bit disjointed. But what I did find interesting about this matchup is they're touting it now on social media as a battle of the brothers. So you got, the two Savias on one side and you got the two Ioannis on the other side. So, there's a little bit of interest, the brother battle. There you go.
The Hurricanes used to be because they obviously with Billy Proctor's brother. They had two Garden Bashops. There was a couple of they practically threw a whole team of them. Nocturnal Rights asks, will Fafita stay tight or go wide? My guess is that they'll play Amua and Fafita wide, and Artie Surveyor staying central because he's captain and that leadership. I guess that is also another issue here of Reed Prinsep. Not really a lock, is he? And yet he's the locking replacement. So I guess Fafita might move into the locks if Prinsep comes in, if one of those locks has to go off. So we might see Fafita start on at 6 and then move into the 4 or 5 jersey.
Isn't it weird? Something else. Savia's back at 7. He's been playing 8 for how long now? I just realised that it's like mixing things around. They could just put Savia back to 8, take Flanders off, put Karifi back into 7, move Fafita into the second row, put Prinsep in at 6. They could completely change things around. The whole dynamic of that whole, 2 back rows would be, that's quite versatile. I thought it's quite exciting.
Yeah, ton of mobility. In fact, that's a heck of a compliment to Devon Flanders that he's actually starting at the number 8 at the back end of Mitre 10 Cup. Absolutely outstanding for the Hawke's Bay Magpies in 2020, and as a player that is on the rise. I know we got some good number 8s running around. Well, he's just another one to add to that list, I guess. So, it's very interesting. And as on Nani Laumapi, I reckon, I don't know, all the talk coming out of Wellington and Laumapi himself, I think he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder this year, and he's got a bit to prove.
Yeah, it's not talking about. Yeah, this package is too loose, and I guess that's what Cornflake was talking about. Very mobile pack, not one that wants to get into a bun fight. Absolutely, with this one, but it does mean that they can cut loose big time. If the Blues again get their kicking game wrong or allow this to become a broken field play game, then this team can really rip that to pieces. So
I remember a couple of years ago, Stephen, when everyone was saying how we had no replacement for Kieran Reid in New Zealand rugby, and once he retires, we're all down the toilet. Remember those days? What the hell? What are they talking about?
That was last year. The year before. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? There are some really good number 8s running around, and you've also got guys like your boy who plays down, who's playing the number 6 jersey, Frizzell for the Highlanders, who I reckon he could step into the number 8 jersey as well. Not to mention Liam Squire and also Mickey Ellie too. My God, it's crazy good.
Well, Colin Grace is also someone that the Crusaders are talking about being an 8. So we'll see how he goes in that one. He was one of the top 6ers last season, let's be honest. The Crusaders saying, yeah, look, he's an 8. That's where I wanted to play going forward. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Moving on to the Blues then. This is one where you're perhaps looking at the bench rather than the style. I go, oh my word. Lay, Eklund, Lualala are the front row. Tuipulotu is captaining with Cowley Tuoti next to him in the engine room. That's a loose trio of Kiriawani, who really stepped up his game last season. Hoskins Tutu, who in some ways people thought was actually going to stop Kiriawani from getting into the side. Now they're playing both well together. And Dalton Papialihi there as well. Knock and Black are going to lead the team around the park. Harry Plummer at 12, which is going to go down well with most fans. Rico Iwani at 13, and then a back three of Caleb Clark, Mark Talia, and Stephen Perifetta. Off the bench, Tolai is the hooker. Then you got the 2 All Blacks props in Carl Tuangafasi and Ofa Tuangafasi. Josh Goodhue and Tom Robinson are the other forward replacements. Aidan Choate is on debut. Then Jordan Ruru and Tanalea Talia. Oh, so sorry. Yeah, again, another 6-2 bench as well here. Stephen Perifetta being a backup to Atari Black if he were to go down. So perhaps the larger, heavier pack expecting to get run around a bit here, Stephen, and that's why they've got the extra forward on the bench.
Yeah, if you kind of look back to a bit of a template to how they played both those games last weekend, very direct and through the middle, and I probably see no change. And once again, it's a compliment to James Lay that he keeps Carl Tunukuiafi on the actual bench as the starter. So for me, a little bit of a surprise there. Also, a little bit of surprise that Josh Goodhue, who was very good last weekend, has been overlooked by Cowley Tuoti, who we know is a very good footballer. Once again, very good carrier as well. Maybe just a little bit more physical. So once again, it comes into that direct game plan. I suppose the question mark is around Harry Plummer. I'm not absolutely sold on him as a second 5, and we all know he's going to have his hands absolutely full on Saturday night, so he'll have to be well on his game. Strangely enough, 3 first 5s in that back line, so there's plenty of playmakers. I just hope they can gel.
Well, that's what we're seeing, aren't we? I mean, the Reds again. They've got 3. They've got 3 in their back line. We've got the Hurricanes have got 2. In fact, perhaps the Crusaders are about the only side that is only playing with 1 playmaker. Actually, maybe the Highlanders as well, but so they've got Josh Iwani on the bench. But multiple playmakers is definitely the way that they're going. A bit surprised that TJ Fayani is injured, which is why he is not in that 12 jersey. Also Finley Christie is off as well, which is so a couple of players injured there that you might have thought would be in the side. So already injury issues for quite a few of the teams early on, because Paia for the Highlanders also out for the season now, which is a real shame for them. He was doing really well pre-season. But yeah, with that carrying duo of Akiriawani and Hoskins Tutu, as you say, up the middle, those 2 running it hard is going to be something we're going to see quite a lot there. Some people worried about Rico on defence. I'm not sure. Look, I think Rico came through the age grades in the 13 jersey, and I don't think he's as poor as perhaps some people think. Stephen.
Yeah, it's an interesting point from Stefan. Plummer will have Rico to help on defence in the midfield. Like I say, on paper this is a good Blues team, but you always have that niggly little doubt in the back of your mind when you are a Blues supporter that there's plenty of talent there, but they're going to have to hit the ground running. Yeah, you can play that direct style against the Hurricanes, but boy, if you leave crumbs lying around, and if you're not accurate, and Ardie Savea will get turnover ball, throughout the game. I see Nocturnal wrote before they'll need a strong scrum. I don't think there'll be too much of an issue at scrum and set piece time, but I think the key for the Blues is just to be, you need to be accurate, 100% accurate at breakdown, especially if you're picking and going through the middle. I mean, so you want to try and grind the Hurricanes down. If the game is loose, then it's at your peril, I reckon, and that's going to be the challenge for the Blues. You got to play direct, you got to play tight, you've got to be on point.
Yeah, it's getting their breakdown technique right. So going into contact, you have to get down because you're only held up for a ruck, held up for a maul, but you don't want to go straight down. Otherwise, that doesn't give you time for your clearers to come in. So that discipline around carrying into contact is going to be key for the Blues, as you say, as to whether they allow players like Akiriwani and Karifi when he comes on to get their hands on that ball, because that's one place where the Blues could, and it's going to mean that Dalton Papali'i has got a lot of work to do, because let's be honest, those locks and the other two Lucies are not known for their breakdown or for their jackling work. So yeah, a lot of work there for Dalton Papali'i in that department.
I think what's going to be key in this game is the possession. Whoever holds possession the most is going to have a huge advantage, because you talk about how the Blues are going to play. If the Blues play that sort of direct style of game, the big guys just going to be rumbling up through the middle. They'll have advantage because they'll be playing that's what they've got the advantage over the Hurricanes with, playing that sort of big boy game. But I think if the Hurricanes hold a lot of possession, they're going to be expansive and moving around, and they're going to run these guys around the field, and that's going to tire the Blues out. So whoever holds the ball for the longer period of the time is going to play the game into their hands later on with the work that they're going to have to set their opposition to do in defence. So that's going to be a massive part. I think maybe keeping the ball in hand more often than you'd probably kick the ball away, just to try and assert your style of play on the match, rather than just getting out of your own half sort of jobby. If you're outside of your 22, just play, run them around, make some things happen. That the Hurricanes, I think they are the ones that probably need to do that more to get that advantage over the Blues. But I do have to say, Paul, comparing Aotearoa Black, Harry Plummer and Stephen Petafeta to James O'Connor and Hamish Stewart, I mean, we're all from New Zealand here, but that's a bit insulting to the Australians, isn't it? Goodness gracious me. Even I'd say that.
So I'd say three playmakers, not necessarily the same standard or style, but three playmakers.
Oh, geez, Harry Plummer's a concern, man. He's a real worry. I like Perafeta. I think the last 2 seasons of injury concern of him has really stunted his growth as a player. When he come in, what was he, 18 or so when he debuted, 18, 19? He was really young, exciting. I thought he could be a real star of the future, but boy, the last 2 years have been really, really rough on him. And I think Harry Plummer doesn't have the mental stability to maybe at 12. No, I'm not even going to try and convince myself of that either. No, it's a disaster. The further you go out that back line, the kind of worse it gets. 10, 12, 15, massive problems. Lamape's going to just be having a dream of wonders tonight. He's just be going to see Harry Plummer's face in the mud. He's going to love it.
Plummer's not is not a small boy.
He's big.
Yeah.
He's not powerful.
Well, yeah, all he's got to do is just get his body in the way somehow to slow Lamape down. It doesn't necessarily. I mean, obviously we don't wish any head knocks on him, but don't worry about the technique. Just get your body in the way. Dominic Cooper, will the Blues do it this year? Oh, geez, ask the $1 million question or the $5 billion question. Look, the Crusaders every year especially when we got Razor as their head coach, come in as favourites. Absolutely. The Blues, top after last year's performances, have to come in as the top challenger, but they are very much the challenger. Whereas the incumbent doesn't look like he's not the old warrior incumbent. He's at the peak of his prime incumbent. Unfortunately, the one thing I just want to take up with you on that one, Steve Cornflake, is that the Blues were the team that apparently kicked the most last season in Super Rugby Aotearoa. The only game they didn't outkick their opponents was against the Crusaders when they lost. So all the games they won by just kicking the leather off the ball and forcing the opposition to play out from their own half. So now, obviously, without Bowden Barrett's kicking game, that's going to be perhaps harder to do. But again, they've got 3 kicking options there in Black, Plummer, and Perifetta, plus the box kicking of Knock. I think we're going to see a lot of the Blues trying to force the game to be in the right territory before they actually start playing.
Yeah, 15-man rugby with 3 kickers. Yeah, I feel sorry for guys like Caleb Clark and Mark Talia as much as I don't rate them. But there you go. No Caleb Clark fan here. I'm sorry. No Caleb Clark fan here. I'm going to buck the trend on that one. Definitely. We're going off track here. But yeah, they'll play that game. I invite the Hurricanes. I invite the Hurricanes to throttle straight back. Yeah, run it back. Run it. Throw it around. Get expansive, get exciting, play that game, run the Blues ragged. I think they can do it, no problems. I do question, why is Knock starting over Ruru? I found that strange, the form that Ruru showed in that last preseason game.
Can I take that one, Paul? It's as simple as that. I mean, it's like Sam
kicking
Knock in probably the last 2 years has developed his game so much. He's probably got the best high kick game of any player in the country. He's probably got the best pass, maybe bar Aaron Smith in the country, and that's both a right to left pass. But we saw something really good about his game. He actually got forwards. He was actually picking out forwards who were in good running positions close to the ruck last weekend, and that's why the Blues were motoring over the advantage line, and that's probably what the coaches saw last week. He's come a long way. He was huge for Northland last year. He was a massive loss when they went into the the final against Hawke's Bay, where Whakatava really had no real, with greatest respect to the young guy that replaced him, had nothing up against him. And if you think back to early last year, the first lot of Super Rugby, Sam Knock was in a very good, rich vein of form, and then picked up an injury along the way. So I think he rightly deserves to be the number one choice there. We've seen an improvement in Jonathan Ruru that we actually haven't seen for a couple of years. And that's the exciting thing for the Blues. I think they've always had halfbacks that were always much of a muchness, and they got swapped in and out like I have hot dinners, for crying out loud. And I think that was the issue. Nobody got a full opportunity to actually nail down that spot. And I think here's the opportunity right here, right now, for Sam Knock, playing with a very, very big pack in front of him. And it's no irony that the Blues pack played so well last year that, if you think about it, probably both Knock and Finlay Christie went really, really well. I put Sam Knock in a very similar situation to Xavier Rowe, who I rate big time as real possible challenges to an All Black jersey moving forward, especially with TJ Perenara. We actually spoke about that on the driving wall the other night. They are 2 players I look at as quality. You know, you talk about players that you maybe not so don't rate and who have got big reputation. Somebody like Whakatava, to me, the jury's still out on Folau Whakatava. And why I say that is because he hasn't found his ceiling at Super Rugby level. Yes, we've seen it at Mitre 10 Cup level, but with the greatest of respect, he played well in the championship final against a Northern halfback who was basically playing his second game of the season, and who were pretty travel weary, should I say. So, yeah, to me, the jury's still out on Whakatava. He's got potential, but I personally think the 2 comers are both Sam Knock and Xavier Rowe moving forward.
Right then, and we need to get across the ditch, boys, because we're going to run out of time, and cover off on Brumbies versus Waratahs. I think we're going to have this. I think a lot of people in the chat are thinking that Laumapi against Plummer is going to win it for the Hurricanes, but I think the Blues have proved that they're actually a decent, the second best side in New Zealand. So I think the Blues are going to come out on top. We'll see. Moving across the across the ditch. So the Brumbies hosting the Waratahs. I will keep on going, whatever. And the Brumbies side: Slipper, McKinley, Aotearoa,
just put the
Swain, Neville in the room, Valentini, Brown, and Samu at the Lucies. Shut up, the 2 of you. I'm speaking. Nick White and Lolasea are the decision makers. We'll have Simone and Ikatua in the centres, and then Hansen, Muirhead, and Tom Blanks at the back 3. Longren, Lloyd, Ross, Frost, Cusack, Longren again. So Latchman and Ryan, Rizjan, Pasitoa, and Finns, Nelia Wasea to come off the bench. Look, the Brumbies, not the exciting team that the Reds were last weekend, but they were in control and had the force where they wanted them for a comfortable win over in Western Australia. Pretty much a similar side out again. You got to say, Cornflake, that they're looking good, looking efficient, aren't they?
Well, that's the Brumbies. They probably one of the most professional looking sort of outfits around. They know what they got to do. They execute it fairly well, and they don't have too many problems doing it. I mean, yet they really controlled the Force. I think the Force, like I said in the review last week, the Force were probably, I think, the better sort of team. Looking at the matchup, if you took the scoreboard out of the equation and just watched the game for what it was worth, the Force had longer periods of control in that game. But the Brumbies, I guess they defended better. They controlled the game and they took their chances, which is probably the most important thing. We know they're not a big, expansive out there try-scoring team, but their pack performs well. They control the breakdown. They're good at the set piece. And they just know how to get things done. And I think that little midfield there, Kitao, I thought played pretty well. Might prove to be a crucial player for their campaign throughout the season. I'm not 100% sold on Mac Hansen out in the wing. They seem to like him out there, but I just thought he kind of struggled out there last week against the Force, but we'll see how he progresses. Again, a youngster coming through. He's not the big power sort of player that you're kind of used to seeing rumbling out in a number 11 jumper. But yeah, overall, finishes if they ever see the ball. But a lot of see, I think, is the key. Nick White, 9-10. Those guys are the guys to get the job done. So we'll see another professional display. I think they've watched the Waratahs last week and they would have said, we know what we've got to do. Let's get the job done. That's it.
Yeah, I can't see them losing to Waratahs, but I don't think they'll rack up quite the score the Reds did. They're not as exciting as the Reds, but they are more organised and controlled. Interesting that the Guardian apparently has had an article where the Channel 9 boss is concerned about the Waratahs' competitiveness. Clearly, he's concerned about his TV ratings there. Any comments about the Brumbies before we move on to the Waratahs, Steve? Sorry.
No, not really. Whenever I think of the Waratahs or not being competitive, I think back to that almighty thrashing that the Waratahs got by the Crusaders. When was that? Back in the late 90s or early 2000s? God, it was an absolute hiding. It might have been 90 odd points the Crusaders put on the Waratahs. Listen, they'll go out and play with a bit of fight, but they'll just get ground down by that Brumbies team. This is the preview show, not the History Channel. If he's concerned about predictions, when you've been beaten by that much, you really shouldn't be concerned about those sort of predictions moving forward.
Yeah, he's concerned about viewer numbers. So quickly through that Waratahs side, then Bell, Horton, Johnson Holmes are the front row. Caird and Wetton in the engine room. Swinton, Tizzano and Jack Dempsey are the Lucy's. Jack Grant and Will Harrison are the inexperienced 9-10. With Moreno, Maria. Sorry guys, I'm butchering Tapai's surname here. There, along with Newsom in the centres. Ram, Marky Mark, and Jack Maddox are the back three. Looking at the replacements, Foriki, Faulkner, Tatola are the front row. Williams, Hugh Sinclair, the rest of the forwards. Harry Robertson, Edmed, and Riley are the other replacements. And yeah, look, we have not seen this inexperienced side from the Waratahs for many years. We said this last week as well, and they're going to struggle. Let's be honest. Hopefully, Cornflake has composed himself after my awful pronunciations, and I'm sorry, folks, for having a bad day today.
Hey, look, if you want to take a positive, let's take a positive for the Waratahs, shall we? Let's look at the pluses they do. Here we go. How do the Waratahs get the best out of this matchup? Well, the Brumbies are going to play a different style than the Reds, like you've already pointed out. The only thing that I really see a chance in them is if they are adapting more to that sort of Brumby style of rugby than they are to the expansive, fun rugby, happy scoring tries from all over the field, Reds type of rugby. They might be more comfortable playing that sort of style, that more like we talked about the Blues, a direct sort of style of rugby and that sort of thing. So, hey, that's the only positive I can see for them. they've lost their they've lost their number 9. Forgot his name. Key guy. He's out for the rest of the season. Jack Grant's coming in. It's all going pear shaped. No, not Joe Powell. He's at the Rebels. Jake Gordon.
Oh, Jake Gordon. There we go.
Yeah, yep. So he's gone for the season. So it's trouble for them. He was their main leader. But we'll just have to hope that old Marky Mark can do the job, eh?
Well, and look, he's a big boy, as you said. Mac Hansen isn't, and he's up against Mac Hansen. So there is a good. Yeah, he's got an opportunity there on that one as well. So thank you, boys. Any last points? Otherwise, we'll join us. We'll be having post-match reactions to the 2 Super Rugby Aotearoa games straight after the games, and also join us at 8 p.m. on Sunday to do the Super Rugby review. We'll wrap up all 4 games in that one. That generally is the show that goes the most off the rails that we have here on New Zealand Sports Radio. So if you like tangential discussions and things, then the Sunday show is for you at 8 p.m. So do join us for that. Thank you very much, Steve Cornflake, and thank you very much, Stephen Harrison. Hope you boys are having a fantastic week. And yes, Super Rugby Aotearoa is almost here.